Welcome back to the ATI podcast. We're in here for episode 141, and season 4 is rolling thick with another fantastic new guest to the program, and that is Heavy Lolo, and I have Robbie here. How we doing, Robbie?
Good. How are you, Barrett?
Hey, man, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for doing the show. This is a real treat and an honor tonight. This is kind of sentimental for me in some ways. I know I shared this with you when I first reached out to having you on the show, and that is I saw you guys like 20 years ago at the Creepy Crawl in St. Louis, legendary venue there. And it was like outside of what I would characterize as local shows, you know, like more regional bands playing. It's probably like my first independent underground show that I went to that wasn't like a major concert or something of that ilk. So it was quite the Pandora's box for me. Experience-wise, obviously, you know, seeing you and bands like the Number 12 Looks Like You on that same tour and Fall of Troy, the energy that you guys brought just stood out to me, and it stuck with me for a lifetime. And it's something that even as I would try to pursue music and have bands and enlist band members, I always, you know, we got to bring that heavy, low energy whenever we're playing live, you know. So a lot of love for you guys. You mean a lot to me.
Thank you. Very cool. Yeah, I think we talked about it, but do you know if it was at the original Creepy Crawl location or?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Rad.
Definitely was. Yeah, not the second one. The second one was a little dicier.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was more ghost towny.
Yeah. It got a little rough there at that place. But fortunately, the good folks from that operation went on to start Food Bar and now what's called Red Flag in St. Louis. So that's a pretty good venue in St. Louis.
Rad.
You know, like the heart of the good employees, I'll say. But yeah, the original Creepy Crawl, man, what a venue. I know there was another band on that show. When I talked to you, I kept thinking it was Gangastron, but I think you'd said that you didn't have the good fortune of playing with them back then.
Was it John Bonet or?
I was thinking either John Bonet or maybe So Many Dynamos because they were a St. Louis band. I know you guys did play some shows with them. I don't know if you played a ton. They weren't really, I wouldn't characterize them as so much in your guys' genre wheelhouse, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything because I know you guys would play with several different types of artists, you know. I wouldn't necessarily characterize Fall of Troy either, but, you know, it's same party vibes. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure.
Outside of that, you guys were just always like a fun band to me, like a party band. Me and my friends, if we were having fun, good time, it was very common that Heavy Lolo was in the background. You know, you guys are a band that always stuck out to me that it was always evident that you were enjoying yourselves, or at least that's what it seemed. If it wasn't, you guys were sure putting on a great act.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, we've always tried to have a good time. There's no point in doing this if you're not going to, you know. And we'd always tour with like very serious bands, but it's like, dude, like we're touring, playing music we created in a garage somewhere for people that are stoked to see it. Like, why not have fun, you know? I mean, there's time for being serious when, you know, you need to get paid or whatever it is, but yeah,
and it's something that set you guys apart too. You know, that I think there's a lot of I'd say maybe your roots, I bet you'd be able to speak to it better than I, of course, but you guys kind of started, I guess, in the metalcore screamo worlds. Not to say that that's what you sounded like at first, but like that first EP, I would say, is a little bit more rooted in like the older metalcore sound. But as you guys progressed along, you guys got experimental and had a lot of fun with your music too. So I think that translated over into the music over the years too, for sure.
Totally.
Robbie, you weren't in the original lineup, were you? You joined shortly thereafter, correct?
Yeah, I didn't join until like the end of 2004, and they recorded that record at the beginning of 2004.
That's the first EP that you're referring to?
Yeah, kids, yeah.
You know, something that stood out right away with you guys as a band, I think kind of signatures of you guys being a band as well as outside of the stage presence we mentioned and just the fun that translated through was a lot of what I would characterize as like call and respond type techniques, whether it would be vocally, you know, the two vocalist thing that you guys had going on. You guys would even do it rhythmically, or the instruments would call and respond back and forth to each other.
Mm.
So that's something that really stood out to me because I had somewhat of a more studious musical background in early years. So it was something like, it was like kind of fun to see played out in a way that I never experienced before as well. So I always felt like that was a huge calling card for you guys as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny hearing it said like that, but because we never thought of it like that, but now I do. We had a lot of parts like that. Yeah, that's very true.
Can you like point your fingers to how or why, or maybe there was an inspiration for you guys kind of implementing that type of stuff into your music?
You know, I can't think of any reason. I was a cheerleader in high school, so that might have something to do with it.
Very well could be. Very well could be. Yeah. So that's so wild that, you know, there isn't anything that you guys could point to, you know, kind of innately stumbled upon that for yourselves.
I imagine, I mean, Blood Brothers might have parts like that.
Sure. Yeah.
The rest of the band loves Blood Brothers. I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah.
I mean, I
can't say that
respect them.
either,
I
for
get
sure.
it. But yeah, the rest of the band loves Blood Brothers.
Whenever you got involved in the bands, Robbie, tell me what that was like. Like, how did you get introduced to the band and you know, eventually be enrolled as a member?
I was in a band called Hatchet and Annie, very metalcore. It's what you'd call beatdown these days because it was just a series of breakdowns strung together with, you know, tweedly parts or whatever. That was from Central California. I lived in a very small town called Taft, California. And we had started talking to one of Heavy Lolo's friends on AOL Instant Messenger. And they were just like, hey, come up here, you know, play this show. It'll be sick. And we were big fans of a metalcore band from up there called Shades of Eden. And they were playing together. So we went up there, we played. And I think one of their singers didn't show up. They had expressed, you know, oh, I don't think he's going to play with us any longer. And something in my head was like, oh, should I do it? We got along really well. My band went home. And I continued to talk to them on AIM. And eventually they were just like, yeah, why don't you join the band as the second singer? So I moved up there like within a couple of months and then just started playing.
Now, as far as you moving up there, I think I stumbled across a story of you talking about for years, whether it was touring or whatever the case was. You know, you slept on a lot of couches over those years. You know, you thanked the folks that allowed you to do so. Did you kind of like run up there on a whim, or did you kind of have a calculated plan, like I'm going to go here and I'm going to live at this place?
The other singer was like, hey, you can sleep on my couch. He had an apartment with his sister, separate rooms, of course.
I hope so.
And he was just like, yeah, you can come sleep on the couch. And I think, you know, I stayed there a little longer than she would have liked. But from 2004 to like 2009 was all couches or hotels that I would get because we were on tour so often. It was just like, I also couldn't afford it. So it was just like, we'd go back. And of course, you know, a friend, mostly Kyle or, you know, any number of friends or individuals would be like, yeah, you can stay for 2 weeks or whatever. Just don't eat my food. So,
well, being the senior too, it's your foot imprint might have been a little bit less than let's say like a drummer or something having to take up all that space and store some instruments and things too. You know, it probably helped a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you were, I would assume, a fan of the band prior to joining the band. Was there anything prior to joining the band that maybe you had like a preconceived notion of the band, and then once you kind of joined the band, things were quite different? Whether it was, you know, you thought that maybe it was the songwriting approach was, you know, very calculated, or then it turned out to be very organic, or I'm just kind of curious, picking somebody's brain who that early on jumped in on the band.
I was so young that, because I moved up there at 18, that I didn't care. I had no preconceived notions. I just was like, let's do this. Let's make music. Because, you know, all throughout high school, some of middle school, I just wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be the person on stage or whatever. You know, I didn't really listen to Heavy Lolo much prior to that. I had one of their CDs, and once I found out that I might join them, I listened to that quite a bit. I just knew it sounded like music that I liked, and I was like, okay, let's go level up from this band that, you know, was kind of cobbled together with friends. It was fun while it lasted. When I heard Heavy Lolo, I was like, whoa, that's the future.
I hear you, and there was a lot of, I don't want to say necessarily trends, but there was definitely some, fringe artists that I would say that were contemporaries, if you will, in some respects, but like people that kind of came up similar time frame as you guys that go on to press their sounds, and this is where I'm going to draw the similarities, push the genre, I guess, that they were kind of operating in. You guys were always kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It never felt you were strictly, obviously not strictly metalcore, not strictly. I mean, mathcore started to become a thing, and that was what you guys became more identified with. But you guys had psych rock parts in your stuff at times. You implemented a lot of different things. I think kind of where things maybe took the most step in a certain direction would be with the 2008 album, of course, and that's Turtle Nipple and the Toxic Shock. I think there's still a little bit of that even to once we get there today, talking about some of the newer stuff that's still present in your music. I guess maybe the big thing to the layman's person that listens to music, there was kind of like almost southern rock riffs in there at times, kind of some of the other artists that would go on to do similar things like Hiatus Legend. They had that big Suck Out the Poison record that kind of leveled them up in various ways and opened up to a whole new audience, but kind of a heat of bands at a similar time that kind of started implementing Point to Every Time I Die, the Big Dirty, for example. They went a little bit more with some southern riffs and that sort of stuff. I'm just kind of curious to hear if there's a particular reason that you feel like that things went that way creatively for you guys.
So with previous records, we wrote music in garages or, over time had created these albums with songs that were cobbled together and put together with, like Everything's Watched. That contains songs from previous albums that we kind of cherry picked because we kind of rushed into recording an album when we got signed with New Weatherman / Ferret. With Courtside, that one's unique in that, we were just very young and we had all this time in this very strange studio to create, our sound post Kids, post the other singers. With Turtle Nipple, it was such an interesting situation because we were still on the label, and so our albums were still being funded. And after recording Everything's Watched with Casey Bates and Tom Faffel, rest in peace, we kind of realized that we had recorded an album, an EP called Fuck It with our friend Sam. And that was such a pleasant experience that come time to do Turtle Nipple, having done Everything's Watched at a professional studio, we were like, hey, let's go back to Sam because he's killing it. He's got a big studio. We'll be afforded a lot of time to do that between tours and we talked to him and he let us live there for an amount of time. So it was just such a pleasant situation in terms of recording, like environment to be able to live somewhere, eat, sleep, play video games, and just create 24/7. Like, even in the middle of the night, we're doing mushrooms or something like that to go into the live room and just record pieces of guitar and bass to isolate and pursue later, just create unique sounds. So I think that's why that record is so different, is that we were afforded the opportunity to get weird and to explore ourselves and explore our instruments and explore just us as a band. So yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned that Happiness poster earlier. We watched one of his movies, Storytelling, around that time, and that went on to inspire quite a bit.
Love that.
And yeah, I guess that's the answer, is just being like, well, we're weird as fuck. We have all this time to record. We have, all these luxuries. Let's get weird. That's one of the only records where like the rest of the band had a hand in, song titles, in some of the lyrics even, because that's usually primarily me. So yeah, it's very cool.
I love that. The two things I took from that, first, of course, we have to lean into the fact you talked about the comfortability that you had. Whenever you have those types of situations, I feel like they yield the best results for the creative environment. That is comfort. People don't put enough value in comfort when it comes to creating in general. What an amazing situation to be in. Secondly, I have to lean into the mention of, was it storytelling about that time? So they kind of had a bit of an impact on you. It's funny because whenever I was pursuing music myself and some of the bands I was into particular directors' films at the time. So like a very profound director on some of our songwriting for a period of time was David Lynch. And so, we had a couple different songs that are about David Lynch films, in particular Blue Velvet. We would get on these rabbit holes, and it's just like creatively where you're at and whatever has the most impact on you at that time. It's kind of like a capsule in time. It's a timestamp place where you were at feeling wise. You always have that memory with that record as well. So that makes it even more special.
Everything I do in life, and especially art, has some flavor of David Lynch in it.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Love to hear that. What's your favorite David Lynch film, out of curiosity? I know it's like picking a favorite child, but what are we feeling today?
I love Mulholland Drive.
It's a good one.
I, of course, rewatched everything after his passing, just like miserably sitting on the couch. I actually didn't rewatch Elephant Man because I was not ready to be that sad again.
Right.
But yeah, Straight Story, I fucking love, just because it's so not him, but it is at the same time. And then, of course, Lost Highway, I just love like that soundtrack. And like the first, quarter of the film with Bill Paxton, just how weird that gets at the end. It's and I love Blue Velvet, of course. Have to say that is probably there's no bad movie.
Right.
And there's, but that's probably the one I reach for last. I love Eraserhead. That was my first exposure, where I was literally just like, oh, I've heard about this guy. I've seen this dude with this hair, and just, spend too much money on the Criterion DVD back then, and then just have my mind absolutely rearranged. Yeah. Love him. Love his short films as well.
Definitely.
Very inspiring to me. What is it, like 4 men getting sick or 3 men getting sick or whatever, which is like, it's like a painting, and then it has holes in their mouths, and he's just feeding stuff through them. I
mean, even his ABC is wild. You could just see where that creative mind would go on to do things in the future. I would say maybe like the thing that I reach for the least, but although I might have seen it as much or any of his other films, is probably Dune. That was a movie that was littered with, freaking studio and producers just hacking the hell out of it. And I know he never looked back on it too extremely fondly, but I thought it was still well done considered. And he did a lot of revolutionary things at the time in cinema with that film. But I enjoyed it. Yeah,
I prefer the old Dune to the Villeneuve Dune with Chalamet and all that.
Yeah, me too.
Not that I don't love that. Not that I don't love the new Dunes, but I do prefer Kyle MacLachlan's Paul Atreides.
Absolutely. And hey, man, can't go wrong with Sting.
No.
As a Harkonnen. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful stuff. Another thing that I had to bring up, too, is I know at one point that you said that you like to make music for weird people to dance to. I don't know that it was necessarily a quote for Heavy Heavy Lolo. I think it was for another project, possibly Bonecutter at the time. But I think it characterizes kind of a lot of the things that you touch in your creative palette, which I'm all for. I just like just to be different and set yourself apart from the masses. You're going to get attention from me, to do it well and tastefully as well. That's a kind of a fine line to walk sometimes. And I know it might be weird because, we got an album with the name Turtle Nipple in it to say that there's some class or some highbrowness in there, but there is in fact, some artistry being executed by these fellas. But again, it kind of goes, the naming conventions and stuff, and even some of the lyrics, as it goes back into that part of you talking about, you never took your guys' selves too seriously. There's a time and a place for that, which is, again, it goes back into the fun that you guys create.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I know it wasn't much longer after Turtle Nipple other than the Hospital Bomber EP that you guys had. I guess you recorded that in 2009, but released it in 2010. But I think you guys were already wrapping things up or announced that you were going to go on hiatus at that time.
Yeah, it was a strange timeline because all of that, when I got a job eventually, it was just like, it just kind of warped my sense of time a little bit. And yeah, we're all a little bit foggy on, just Hospital Bomber in general.
I think it still carried over some of the creative things that you guys were doing from Turtle Nipple for sure, while bringing back some of the things that you guys did of old at the same time. With the layoff, I got to ask what kept you guys busy? I know that there were several other creative projects that popped up over time, but I'm just fascinated to hear what life was like in between for you guys until about 2019 when you decided to do it all over again.
It was interesting. I tried to assume a normal life. I got a full-time job at fucking Google.
Wow.
Which was nice.
Doing what there?
Geotagging stuff, working in Google Maps, just like weird stuff, just moving stuff. like calling in businesses, confirming information, things like that. Very easy, got paid a lot, was very nice. After that, I just kind of tried to find what to, I don't know. I moved around a few times, eventually ended up in Santa Cruz, California, where I spent, about 4 years, something like that. And that is where I was given a camera, an old Sony DVX 100, and I started to make movies with that. So, or short films and, experimental pieces and things like that. And I guess that's what I've been doing since is, working odd jobs and starting the occasional band. Me and Rue started a band called Downstairs eventually. I was in a band called I Wanna Die. That's just like traditional hardcore, really fast hardcore, I guess. And yeah, just making video projects and getting from point A to point B, I guess.
Were you involved in the Dim Dam Thang Boys project?
No, that's Danny. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I believe, if I read this correctly, which brings in a funny tie with a former guest of ours, but apparently it was popular in the kendama world. And so Danny's kind of a kendama head from what I understand. And James Beveridge, drummer of Portrayal of Guilt, wanted to give a special shout out to you guys, of course. Actually, whenever I record with him, he gave Danny a lot of love on getting him into kendama, so that he considered that to be one of his prevalent hobbies of today now because of Danny in particular.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Dan has been spreading the gospel of kendama to anybody who will listen. I can't even get the fucking thing. I can't. I think I got the ball on the thing one time.
Wow. I can't say that I've ever played it. It's I mean, nowadays with the internet age, you can, obviously order something offline and get it very quickly, but it was never something that was readily available in my parts for the longest time. So
I had never even seen one until Danny brought it around. So yeah.
Yeah, I was only vaguely aware of it because of film, but it was always like a background piece. Not to say like I watched a kendama film, which if there's one out there, I'm sure Danny could probably tell us if he was on the
I'm sure. Yeah.
But yeah, James gave a lot of love to that. And of course he wanted to give you guys a shout out in the sense of he's really loving the new material too. He said it's really sick and he's loving what you guys are doing too.
Hell yeah. We love Portrayal of Guilt.
Yeah, good guys, man. Absolutely love those fellas. But yeah, I had to bring up the kendama bit because I didn't realize that there was actually a musical project tied in that world as well.
Yeah.
Very funny. 2019, you guys began posting on Instagram, I believe. You released the live EP about that time. Were you guys just thinking you're going to release this EP, maybe make a few coin off of it with no intention of getting back together, or was this kind of a calculated thing, like, oh, we're going to get back together? Talk me through that.
No, we didn't plan on getting back together, but there were a number of people who would always ask about that album because somehow it ended up on Wikipedia once upon a time, and it was probably just one of us bullshitting with one of our fans and just being like, yeah, we have this live album we've never put out, but it existed. And so I went ahead and figured out where that was. Sam, the guy who recorded Turtle Nipple, Pain Olympics, Hospital Bomber, fuck it, he still had it, thank God. And yeah, we just put it out. And then eventually Silent Pendulum, I believe it, Silent Pendulum put that vinyl out.
I guess with the popularity and demand of that album, it maybe started the conversation about you guys potentially doing some reunion shows, or how did that come about?
Yeah, the fact people still gave a shit and that, we had grown up, we, have things slightly more figured out, some of us more than others, inspired us to be like, hey, let's do this. It was before COVID, so it wasn't like we were affected by any life affirming gratitudes or anything like that. But if anything, we're just pissed at COVID. But yeah, I don't remember because somebody asked me this recently and I was just like, that's a good ass point. The thing is, we've always been good friends. Even when we weren't playing music, we'd always, like I said, I was in a band with Rue. Rue was eventually in a band with Danny eventually. And we just always kept in touch through the blessing and curse that is social media. And eventually, I think we all realized we were in better places and well enough to, get back to playing music and possibly traveling and all of that.
Sure. I would imagine that things kind of started out with the idea that you would do like reunion shows, hit on the old material, brush that up. When did that kind of shift from we're doing reunion shows, maybe weekenders, whatever the case was, to let's do something new. Let's start creating again.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I think they just kind of bled into each other. Once we were playing, some of those shows when we came back, I think it was in Texas where we were just like, hey, should we, just haphazardly, we're just like, should we make some more music? And our drummer, he was a DJ for quite some time. I think he still DJs, but he used to do shows at this nudist colony in Santa Cruz, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, called Lupin Lodge.
Whoa.
R.I.P. And one day he was just like, hey, we were like throwing around ideas, when to make music, how to make it. And he was like, we should do it out at Lupin. We could stay there for next to free because they have these giant yurts. Like it's very hippie. So we were throwing around ideas, like, should we get, an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere and, try to write some music, or, just go to the studio? And we were like, we can't write at the studio. Like, that's just, it's not,
too formal,
conducive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, there happened to be this recreation spot at the Lupin Lodge, just in the middle of like this big community. And in the bottom of it was like a storage space. And they were like, yeah, you can record. I mean, you can write, you can play as late as you want. So we went out there, we rented a yurt, and we stayed at this nudist colony. And I think we only came up with like 4 songs, something around there. We were there for a week, and we played a show in San Jose at the time. And yeah, once the ball started rolling and we started figuring things out with Sam, in terms of, like, when can we record? Is this possible? Can we write more at the studio? Everything just started going. And, when we did get done at Lupin Lodge, like I said, we had 4 songs. When we went to the studio, though, we had all of these formed ideas and like skeletons of other things and ideas and
Jumping off points.
desires. Yeah, jumping off points. And so once we got there, it was just like, it came out of us like lightning. And I had been, writing for quite some time lyrically. So I was ready for everything. And yeah, it just flowed out. It came out quite quick. We all live in different places now. We don't all live in California any longer. So it was really tough getting into the studio when we could, and recording and all of that. So it took us about a year to do this record, maybe a year and a half from its conception. So yeah.
Out of curiosity, whenever you guys were doing the writing at the nudist colony, were you required to be nude yourselves?
No, it was it was fall, I think. No, it was spring. So it was and spring in the Santa Cruz Mountains is still pretty cold.
A little off season, I guess, for that community. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, not that there weren't
still people
participants. Yeah. And Danny was naked all the time. He's naked anyway. So most of the band would only the festivities later at night, a little more relaxed and not so
maybe with some recreational items.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I wouldn't wish anybody on to have to be around me playing music in the nude, because the ass swamp session is real and is feral. Yeah, I don't wish that on my worst enemy, as a matter of fact. Well, what I love about you guys, outside of the things I've already mentioned, is kind of this movement of, and there's a lot of predominant examples I could give, but I'm just going to bring up some guests that we've had on the ATI podcast. Bands like See You Next Tuesday, Drew has become a good friend. Bands like Jerome's Dream. These bands that had early success in the 2000s, if you will, but now are coming back in full force and creating new stuff, and just as good as that they've ever been. So, now you guys have announced the Pain Olympics, of course, that's coming out this spring. 12 tracks. You got a tour coming up, so we're going to get into all that as well. But of course, we got to talk about the first 2 singles that you've released. And I Go Where I'm Kicked, wonderful song name. Amazing video. as well.
That is a little insider. That title is do you know Sam Peckinpah, director of The Wild Bunch, among many others? In an interview one time, somebody had asked him how he decides on his scripts or something like that, and I think he said something like, "I'm a good whore. I go where I'm kicked."
That sounds like just a lovely Southern colloquialism, in general.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up in the South. I'm south of St. Louis, about an hour and a half, so we're
Hell yeah.
near the Boot Hill of Missouri. So
You
that
got
type of
boiled
talk's
peanuts.
common around here. Oh yeah, boiled peanuts. That's a thing. It sure
Hell
is.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. And the music video, which you're actually getting to flex creatively for yourself too, and the creations thereof. Talk me up about this music video. Absolutely love it too.
So that one was directed by our friend Jacob Nichols, the guitarist of Duck Duck Goose. And yeah, we came up with that together. Just kind of, he came up with a concept, and then, prior to that concept, I had bought a bunch of random stuff on Amazon, just thinking, these I didn't have a story in mind. I was just like, I know I'm going to dump blood on my head. I know I am going to have a cloaked figure. And then I bought a few other things that we didn't even use, like an old band mask and, nicer clothes. And, but then he, closer to the time, he had presented something he had written with an actual story. So we drove out there, and then we just spitballed for a day and a half, actually. Yeah, came up with what you see. Lots of beer, lots and lots of footage. Like, that was what was so challenging about editing that one, was that we had shot so much.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I'm so bummed that a lot of it did not make it into the thing, but it's like, you got to kill your darlings.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just really stoked on the way that came out, because it's got sort of a Western vibe, sort of, like just like an, indie drama vibe in there, with like some very weird surreality going on,
Yeah, I love, and there's kind of this through line too, even with Soft and Obedient, and just some of like the violent imagery and the gorish things and the macabre implements and all that stuff too. You guys are kind of hitting this rarefied air where I've talked about it with a few bands in the past here, and that's where it's all the things are coming together. Whether it's the music, the aesthetic pieces. I just really love seeing you guys just come out this hot. With new material 10 years, 15 years later. It's just really, it's really heartwarming in many ways. It kind of, again, I talked about it with these other bands, and that's, it's just like the dream never dies in some respects, only if you let it. So, just, it's really encouraging to me to see stuff like this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think in that time that we were away, we just became even more individuals, going our separate ways and acquiring all these new tastes, whether it be me with my film stuff, Danny with his kendama, and et cetera, et cetera. It's like we went off and created maybe not new personalities, but refined personalities compared to what we were back then, when we were kind of just like winging it. And I think that has helped a lot with our new aesthetic, I guess you would call it. It's just like, well, I make movies, and I love making music videos, and just like having accompanying visuals for songs. We were going to try to do every song with the music video, but the daunting nature of that, the money,
sure.
I'm not being paid to edit these things, and I spend 2 weeks on it sometimes, so it's like there's a line that needs to be drawn. But yeah, I am loving it as well, and just being able to have full control, because it's not like we didn't in the past, but we were kind of, we went where we were kicked or whatever. We were like, yeah, okay, and like, kind of just agreeing to some things, whereas now we have the leash. We're the managers.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure that there was an element of, you guys were young at the time. You guys are close to my age. I was a senior when I saw you guys play the Creepy Crawl way back when. So, you guys are just a few years older than me. If somebody would have thrown a record contract at me at that time, I'd been like, yes, sir, please more. Yeah, just I'll do whatever you say, you know, and so you get caught into these trappings. You don't know any better. But, you know, I don't necessarily want to call them mistakes because you guys, you know, gained some level of fame and notoriety in the underground in particular. And there was a call for you to come back. So, you know, it was certainly successful in some hand, but, you know, you guys can now, you're in the unique position that you can do these things largely on your own. So that's also a good thing.
Yes, sir.
Soft and Obedient too, man. You gotta give some love to that track as well. Man, I just can't get over how you guys just have found this way to lean into what you guys started exploring, with Turtle Nipple. You know, still bringing back some of that old metalcore leaning stuff, whether it's the riffs or, you know, the odd time signature shifts and changes very quickly and violently. You guys have went in a little bit more of a, I'll say what is most like the old you in a punk rock fashion, in the sense is nice short heaters, at least these two, you know, a minute and a half, I think, is one of the tracks. But yeah, man, it's punk rock, man, whether it's the cinema aspect or the musical aspect, you know, you're getting in, you're getting on, you're getting off, and you're getting out.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think the longest song on the new record is 2 minutes and 43 seconds or something like that. And there's
That's
noise
your stairway to heaven.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I don't know if this is something that you can reveal, but you guys have been known to be a band with the secret tracks. Is that something that we're considering to doing going forward still yet, or is that not in the works?
No, we didn't, unfortunately.
Okay.
I don't know why. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know why.
I mean, they weren't always necessarily anything of, you know, I think what was the first one when you guys were on the acoustic guitars just singing?
There's a Bat.
Yeah.
Acoustic.
Yeah. Some of them were just noise, you know, so it wasn't necessarily.
I guess this one we do have, if you want to categorize,
get technical about it,
that noise at the end of Turtle Nipple as a secret track, then
yeah,
we do have a secret track.
yeah
on this one, because there is some more noise.
Very good. Well, I'll accept it.
We love noise.
Absolutely.
Just making noise, listening to noise. So any chance we can put that on here without completely pissing anybody off, we tried.
Well, I mean, it adds a lot to the atmosphere. Again, you know, it's something that you guys had did in varying ways over the years, whether it was just wacky guitar effects in a certain part or, you know, whatever the case was. But, you know, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to hear noise from you guys. And if they are, they're just
No.
a fucking asshole at this point, to be honest with you. I'll be that guy.
We've got some messages or some comments from people in the past that were like, oh, you introduced me to harsh noise or noise. And I was like, really? Like,
that's cool.
I wouldn't have ever thought that, but I'm incredibly grateful that we were able to usher that into people's
somebody's
lives.
life. Yeah, for sure. I know you guys have the tour that you recently announced as well. So let's talk about that, the run that you guys are about to go on.
You know, in 2022, we did a West Coast tour and an East Coast tour, and then we ended that year by going to Texas. So we've been slowly, as our schedules and lives permit it, trying to make our way to places we haven't been in some time. So with this next tour in July, it goes from Chicago and cuts down diagonally down to Orlando, which is a very strange routing to just start Chicago as a band that's not from Chicago. But again, we're just trying to like find these spots we haven't been to in quite some time and get there, while also doing like we did Japan in 2023. We'll probably, we'll do a couple of American things, and then we'll do something overseas, and then switch back and forth to doing that, but doing them in very, 8 to 10, 4 to 8 day runs. But yeah, we're extremely excited. That particular tour, the first 5 days, this band Dr. Manhattan is playing. We played with them in 2009 on a tour with, I think it was Fear Before. No. Yeah, it was Fear Before. Yeah. And just really got along well with those guys, and excited to see them again.
That's very cool to get the opportunity to play with those guys again.
Yeah.
And I believe in the midst of that, as well as you guys are doing the MATHCORE Index Festival, is that correct? Or is that a later? Okay.
Yeah, that's 9 days before we fly out to Chicago.
Yeah, so you get to play with some folks of old as well, and future guests here. Duck Duck Goose, we've mentioned them previously. I know you guys had a rapport with them. Killer lineup announced, Missouri Executive Order 44, another great band.
Love that.
It's going to be on
Love
that. Bill as well. A lot of cool bands have been announced for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Wish I could make it out to that one. I already used up my fest card this year. My wife won't let me. But
I was reading the LAMBGOAT comments on that festival before I got on here.
I was
having a good laugh.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I was kind of curious because, you know, this is something I got into with Drew from See You Next Tuesday, was the funny nature, because we're all probably old enough to recall back even then the comment boards and the message boards regarding LAMBGOAT and just how visceral they could get at times. I don't necessarily pay as much attention present day to that because a lot of that breaks out over social media now instead. Even without, you know, people actually reading the article, of course, particularly on Instagram, you know, you can't really put the article up other than in stories or go into the bio to get something. But, you know, people have a shitty opinion right out the gate. You got any fun ones you want to share with us that you took personal enjoyment, had a good chuckle at?
I mean, I find them all funny. Just the fact that, you know, that's all these anonymous comments. It's like, please put your name on there, please, like, so I can look into what type of person you are.
I love it.
When I was younger, it affected me a lot more, you know, back when, you know, like 2006 or something. I remember being on tour in Minnesota, or in Minneapolis, I believe it was, with Number 12, and we were like just having downtime, and something had been posted, and I went on LAMBGOAT to read it, and it was just all of these people wishing death on us, and it really affected me at the time. Now, I love it. I think it's very funny. I'm pretty self-deprecating myself. I don't talk about wanting myself to fan flip or anything like that, but that was always my favorite, I guess, was just like, fan flip. It's like, yeah. Well, I hope not, but
yeah,
that's a pretty specific and very brutal death you're wishing upon this band from your anonymous basement or office or whatever the hell it is. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I still read them every time because, you know, it's fucking funny.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do is laugh at it nowadays. Fortunately, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. You know, certainly I care what people think on some level, but you have to matter to me for me to care what you think.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it's kind of easy to kind of look at that stuff nowadays, particularly as I've gotten older, to just get a good laugh out of it, you know? Mm-hmm. Hey, man, sometimes it's kind of funny, you know? Yeah,
they win if you let it get to you, they win.
Absolutely.
So it's like, let it slide right off you.
Yeah, I think it's always important to bring it up because there's young cats, you know, that maybe are even looking to you guys. Just as weird as that might feel, you know, this was weird to me to put into context, but I knew it was always, it's a thing, obviously. But 2021, I went and saw Failure for the first time.
The 90s band, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic Planet.
Oh, one of my favorite albums of all time, probably top 10.
Premium heroin music.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Yeah, that was their somewhat demise there for a period of time. But yeah, man, I absolutely love Failure. And there was a really young kid in front of me, like, you know, almost 40, and he had to be 12. I don't know.
Wow.
He was very young. Mm-hmm. And the lady that was running the merch table was a older middle-aged lady, and she was actually taking queries as people were getting the merch, like, oh, how'd you hear about Failure? How do you know about Failure? Which was kind of weird to me because I'm like, they're fucking legends. Like, why do you need to ask that question? But the kid was also very young, so I could maybe see why the curiosity piqued her maybe to ask. And the kid was like, oh, I found him on Spotify. And I'm which is awesome. It's awesome, you know, that it provided that opportunity. And he actually, you know, got his dad to buy him a ticket and bring him to the show. But, you know, it was just weird to me to think that this band that was a band for some period of time was discovered through Spotify, because how I discovered them was terrestrial radio in the 90s. You know, I heard Stuck on You and I'm like, what the fuck? Well, actually, it was in line at Six Flags because they were a WB band.
Wow.
So they would pump the WB bands on the label they would play their music videos while you're waiting in line. And the Stuck on You video came on. It was like kind of that James Bond alluding I think A Day to Die or whatever, but I'm standing up there looking and I'm like, whoa, this looks like James Bond. And like Austin Powers was kind of out at the time too, which I knew was a James Bond spoof and everything. So it just like caught my attention immediately. But that was how I discovered it. It was so much different than him. But in some ways it's the same, that's what radio is today to a lot of kids too,
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there's people probably discovering you guys that way too.
I hope so. It is funny, like just hearing from people of all different ages. It's so gratifying, just to hear that and just be discovered still, and to kind of be relevant, I guess, still. Because a lot of people, would come up to us or talk to us prior to getting back together or whatever, and just be like, hey, all these bands sound like you now. And I'm like, what? Really? Because I don't really listen to a lot of heavy music in our style. I'm a little more, I don't know, a little heavier or a little softer. I don't really mess with our type of music. And if I do, it's older stuff. Just to hear that, and like just to hear some of these bands that know or don't know that they sound like us, or one of the many other bands that we sought to sound like or whatever, it's just very cool. But I still find stuff on, I hate Spotify. I think it's terrible. The money situation, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
But I still find, because I listen to a lot of drone on there and stuff, I still find artists on there, and I love it. But nothing's like, when we were younger, where it's just like finding a tape or finding a CD, or even going to Hot Top and going to that like listening station that they used to have, and just being like, this one, or like Sam Goody when they had that.
Sam Goody, FYE, Walmart, where I'm from, they had those listening stations. Walmart was like the only place, because we were considered pretty rural. The next closest major city would be like St. Louis or Cape Girardeau, almost equidistant in different directions for us. But yeah, like the only place you could buy. There was briefly a locally owned music store, but that went out almost immediately as soon as Napster became prevalent. Really the only thing that people would go there to buy after that was t-shirts, and that didn't keep the business afloat. But going to a music store and discovering something, whether that's, the shop workers playing a record overhead and you're like, what is this? That was always a way. Or I was a big video gamer when I was younger. So like obviously things like Tony Hawk Pro Skater or like fucking NBA Street, because I love old hip hop and boom bap and that type of stuff too.
Movies too.
Movies, absolutely. Movies.
Discovering, whether it be on the soundtrack or somebody playing live or whatever. Yeah. But also come like high school, when the internet was getting a little more popular, a little more accessible, mp3.com, and like hxcmp3.com, I would just scour that stuff for hardcore, for screamo, for anything I could find. I'd download it,
blog spots.
Yep.
That was a big thing for me.
Yeah, the blog spots were huge.
Yeah. Doing the old MediaFire riffs, and then if you couldn't find them there, you try Pirate Bay or fucking blow up your computer with LimeWire or something like that. But yeah, man, what a time. Yeah, I feel like that the search that you had to go on back then sometimes made you even more invested in an artist. I don't know if there's quite that level of discovery that folks have to go through nowadays. And sometimes I feel like we kind of get caught up in the excessiveness of accessibility. There's too much for us to maintain our attentions. I think people talk on about like fucking YouTube or TikTok culture, how it's impacted people's attention spans. I got young kids myself, and sure, it does have an effect on them. But I think it's just all about how we usher future generations to, people forget that, the adults in the room are technically still in control, if things are trending in that direction, I feel like it's a failure on those raising and impressing upon the youth. So, I take my opportunities. My oldest daughter, she's got a CD player. She's got a cassette Walkman style player. I mean, I exposed her to all types of media. I got them we started doing VHS projections at the house. I got a really good copy of Jaws. So I hosted a summer party at our house, invited some of our friends about the same age with kids. And like most of these kids have never seen VHS before, and I get some of the best quality, but came out pretty decent on my projector.
Yeah.
Showed it late at night when the lighting was all killed. I think that it opened it up to a different media experience that they didn't have before. And a lot of these kids that came over to my house, like Jaws is their favorite movie now, like these little 10, 11-year-olds, so it's kind of cool. for them to, it's an experience that they never had before, you know? So I think, again, it's about kind of being that good usher going forward.
Yeah, people need curatorship, you know? There is a lot to wade through. A lot of it's bad.
Yeah, for
Not
sure.
much of it is good. So I do like, YouTube for that specifically. It's just like curatorship. There's a lot of really good channels on there that are like, that will point you in the direction of the good stuff. I mean, not that I need it because
I already know my shit.
yeah.
I love it. Well, Robbie, you've been so generous with your time. I didn't, want to walk away without leaning in just a little bit more into your filmmaking stuff too, because it's something that I found myself enjoying that I wasn't real educated or aware of you even doing until I believe we were discussing before we started recording tonight that I seen your name in the credits on the videos and stuff. So I thought, well, maybe I'll look into more what Robbie's been up to over the years, and saw that you had your own website and a lot of your work was broken out there with, embedded videos. So I'm going to put that in the episode details for any of our listeners if they want to pursue that further and check out some of Robbie's work. I know you had a feature film on there. I didn't have the time to check that out, but I did check out several of your shorts.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I really enjoyed, the ones that I enjoyed the most were Snakebite, Groaning Love, Terrible 2, and then Two Ghouls, as well as M is for Melancholy. Really enjoyed all those shorts. So I highly recommend those. I always like to write down first impressions when I see stuff. So I'm going to run through some of these just for entertaining purposes. Snakebite, I actually was telling you this before we started recording. The first vibes I got from that was ABCs of Death VHS style, maybe anthology submission. But little did I know, once I got to M is for Melancholy, that you actually did do a submission for ABCs of Death too. And it was M is for Melancholy. So that was really cool to come across, because you were definitely locking into those type of vibes. Funny enough, my friend Doug Wicker has been who is a filmmaker. He's been on this show several times doing some of our film retrospectives. He actually did a submission for ABCs of Death as well the same year. And he also did M. He did M is for Microwave and did a submission. Wow. Yeah, very well done as well. So, but yeah.
Seeing the other ones, I was so discouraged because everybody's was so great. And I shot mine on a DVX, first time editing, et cetera, but I'd love to see that.
Was that the first one that, maybe I'm confusing with another, was that the one that you said that was kind of like your first attempt at found footage? Or was that?
No, that was
Two Ghouls.
Oh yeah, Two Ghouls.
Two Ghouls. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Two Ghouls I loved as well, because immediately and I would say that another piece of your work kind of has these vibes as well. But Two Ghouls kind of gave me maybe like a harmony coring found footage type vibe at first. I like movies like Trash Humpers, even some like Harmony Corin's earlier work, Julian Donkey Boy almost has that kind of feel to it.
That specific film inspired Two Ghouls, actually, cool. Especially with, I forget what it's called, I think it's called not a harpsichord, harmonium or something like that. There's one of those in the film. That scene is inspired by Julian doing that dance.
Very cool. I got to ask you, on the Terrible 2, I got some Hills Have Eyes and Trash Humpers vibes with that one, but how did you get the Svelte Anthony Fantano in the overalls to play a role for you?
That's my buddy Joe. Okay. He has worked on me, worked on everything I've done except for M is for Melancholy.
Okay.
I believe. He's actually the other guy in Two Ghouls.
Okay.
I don't think he takes off his mask.
I was going to say, there's the cat that wears the mask the whole time. I imagine it was him.
Yeah, he's the assistant director on both my features. He's my partner in crime.
Awesome. Well, and then the other one I have to mention, of course, is Groaning Love. And, at first I was thinking kind of like Bug and Descent. Really the film treatment, although it was more of a green hue, but it had almost like, kind of like how Saul opens up in that room and you kind of like wondering what the fuck is going on. He's got to saw his leg off sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Just some of the gore elements and stuff too. But yeah, I mean, I think you got a great creative eye, and, most of these shorts are like in the 3-minute range. So, if people are just, introduced to the short world, I'm not sure if it's for you. I think this is definitely a good litmus test to check out some of Robbie's work. It's captivating and it's very entertaining. I think you got a good creative eye.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully I'll get the time to check out some of that feature work of yours as well. I'm ashamed I didn't know about it sooner, but I definitely will after our conversation.
It's definitely, different than the shorts, but I think you would get it just in terms of some of these filmic things that you've been throwing out. Do you know what slow cinema is by chance?
Yeah.
So my first feature is just a slow cinema film.
Fine.
Very long static takes, and I'm obsessed with slow cinema. So
Yeah, it has a certain pacing and atmosphere that, when done right and done well, is some of the most captivating cinema, in my opinion. But I understand it takes a certain creature to be into that stuff for sure.
Yeah,
Without question. So it's definitely not for everybody, I'll say. I gotta pick your brain on the subject of films. If you're gonna do your letterbox top 4, what's something that we might see up there for you, Robbie?
I can just try to remember mine right now.
Let's go for it.
I know I have my own film in there. That's Grieve is on there because you gotta. I'm trying to remember it. It's so funny. I look at that thing every day, but I know Wild is on there. Sauvage from 2016. It's about a woman who hears about a wolf in a park in Paris, I think it is, or a suburb of Paris, and her plans to catch it, take it home, and keep it as a pet, and eventually possibly love her. That's an incredible film. It's on Tubi. Oh, gosh, what else is on my top 4? Oh, I think Weekend is the Andrew Haigh film. I think it's also from 2016. It's a gay romance movie. It's just like, I was so tired of all these like meet cute dramas, I guess, of straight relationships or whatever. And Andrew Haigh, who did, the series Looking and some other really great films, 45 Years, he does this just really great gay romance it's got some funny stuff, it's got some drama. That's one of my favorite films, just the look of it, the relationship, the acting, everything about it.
Did you see Love Lies Bleeding last year? It came out last year?
Yeah.
Did you like that?
I liked it a lot. Yeah. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Saint Maud, Rose Glass's previous film.
Yeah.
But I loved Love Lies Bleeding because it's just, a modern exploitation film with
absolutely
art house sensibilities and huge personalities in Kristen Stewart and especially Ed Harris and Dave Franco while he was
slimy
alive.
piece of shit.
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I love that movie.
I love the big swings they took towards the end. I know not everyone did, but I was like, well, where else could you go from here? Like, what are you going to do? Do everything else that was done in the 90s? And,
Sure. Yeah, the fantastical leaps that it takes. Some people weren't for that ride, but I was, because even though like they weren't up necessarily to with the best intentions and everything that they did, you're still rooting for, those protagonists, Kristen Stewart and her lover, I forget her name. You're rooting for them to get out of this impossible situation. So, I mean, you're going to have to do something absurd as it is. Why not go full bore? It was kind of my thinking with it,
It's like the screenwriter just stepped in.
Yeah,
it's
right.
so interesting. It's like, oh, okay, I like that.
And then the darkly comedic moment at the very end is top notch. I absolutely love it.
Number 3 is probably The River by Tsai Ming Ling. Speaking of slow cinema, that one's awesome. It's about an actor, or like kind of like he does acting as kind of like a hobby. He's at the filming of a movie in this river, and they have this this dummy in the water like floating around, and they're trying to get this aerial shot of it, and they're like, it looks like fucking shit, it looks like shit. And they see this dude, I forget his name, and they're like, hey, will you get in the water and play this this dead body? And he's like, fuck, I guess. And he goes in there and he's like, oh, it's disgusting. He gets it done. They're like, okay, it looks beautiful. Fast forward, a week or two, his neck starts hurting really bad. And it gets to the point where he's just like this throughout the whole movie. And just like, at the same time, there's all this familial drama going on with his dad, his mom, his relationships, and his failing body. And it culminates in just this, something that you could never guess from the beginning. And when it does happen, you're just like, okay, all right. It's a miserable film without feeling miserable. Like at no point are you like, fuck, I want to turn this off. But the culmination and what you get by the end is just like, well, that was world class misery.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and it's just so expertly done that you don't exactly clock that until you are done with the experience and have come out the other side a changed human.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think I find myself drawn to movies that it takes you a while to decide. You can maybe walk away with an immediate feeling that you like it, but you can't necessarily explain why at first. It's going to take you some time to think and digest and ruminate on it. You know, those movies typically have a more lasting and profound impact on me. I feel like, you know, that, you know, it takes me some time to digest. And, you know, that, don't get me wrong, there's those popcorn flicks out there, what I call, you know, the mindless entertainment flicks. Usually they're blockbuster types, and occasionally, yes, they can be good or whatever. They have their time and place, you know, the big theatrical events. But yeah, I look for something for a little bit more substance, to ruminate on myself, for sure.
Yeah, if it doesn't last, then it's just, you know, and I'm down for like that, like you said, the popcorn stuff where it just washes over you and it's gone by the next day. But yeah, if it doesn't last, it's not for me, you know. I need to have to, you know, stew on things. I need my art to change me fundamentally.
Absolutely. What are some artists that are currently in your rotation, Robbie, out of curiosity? What's somebody that you've been listening to a lot lately?
Music, it's funny, I get into these waves where I'm like, okay, I listen to too much podcasts and I kind of I neglect music, and then I'll go back to music and I'll be like, oh shit, I forgot about this. Like,
Yeah,
I forgot how good music is.
for sure.
But lately, I love that new Godspeed record.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love the new Infant Island,
Yes.
Asphalt Obelisk. I mostly listen to scores.
Did you catch Obsidian Wreath, the Infant Island record from last year?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
loved it.
Very good.
I don't know why I said Asphalt Obelisk. What is that?
I'm not
City
sure.
and Wreath.
Yeah. It's not ringing a bell for me right now. Maybe
That's
it's a track
funny.
on there, but I'm terrible with like remembering track names now in my older age.
Me too.
Because like most of my listening is I'm driving in the car, so it's streaming over my phone now, and I don't really like look at the shit on the car because otherwise I'm a terrible driver. And then it records, you know, I put a record on, I clean the house, get my kids their baths and help them with their homework, and you know, I'm not standing in front of watching the card on the back of the record, unfortunately.
Yeah, really like that Senza record. There's the movie wasn't fantastic. I really liked the movie, but there's a film called Sometimes I Think About Dying, and the score by Dabney Morris is a heavy rotation for me. I recently got a record player again, so I've just been listening to a lot of old vinyl. Like, did you ever Sabretooth Zombie?
That one don't ring a bell.
Oh man. Just looking at your hat, what's going on in the background, you gotta check out Sabretooth Zombies Midnight Venom as soon as we get off here. And then these are both 12 gauge bands, but this band Throats from the United Kingdom from like 2010 or something like that. Fantastic. So I've been alternating between those two records and the Twin Peaks Return soundtrack.
Well, hell yeah, that's sick.
Hell yeah.
Love it.
Hell yeah.
Who are some like profound artists for you? And you know, let's just say maybe artists that walked you into being a fan of heavy music and pursuing music yourself.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, my very first show ever was Korn in 1999.
Okay.
So I guess, you know, Jonathan Davis, maybe not so much now, but, you know, when I was in 7th, 8th grade, that was like,
Absolutely.
it was like, wow, that guy, he,
Absolutely.
you know, works with dead bodies. He, you know, has, you know, is not afraid to, you know, share,
Trauma
strange
from his
things.
life.
Yeah, traumas and things.
Yeah.
You know, those 2 or 3 records actually.
Yeah, those
the
first 3.
self-titled Life is Peachy and Follow the Leader. It's like I may have stopped listening to them when I got into air quotes cool music, but still, like they've reverberated through my life.
I stuck with them just a little bit longer. Issues. I listened to that.
Well, yeah,
And and then I fell off. It was probably about 99, I think, issues came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I submitted art to that contest.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but similar to that ABCs of Death thing, once I had submitted it and looked at it among the other pieces of art, I was like, what was I thinking? Like, like, in what world would this have passed and won, you know? And then I don't really, you know, like I said earlier, David Lynch is like, from a very young age, just I aspired to do things like he would, you know, without outwardly, you know, like aping him and, you know, being weird for weird sake and things like that. It's just like that man. It's just like, yeah.
He also had kind of like this. I don't know if I would say timelessness per se, which certainly that descriptor applies to him, but I mean, in more in relation to like his musical taste, he was even open to like newer artists, you know. So when he did a film like Last Highway that you mentioned earlier, you know, implementing this was like, I think that might have been the first film technically that Trent Reznor worked on in some capacity. But you know, having artists like, you know, Nine Inch Nails is on there, Smashing Pumpkins is on that soundtrack. You know,
Rammstein.
Rammstein. They were modern artists of the time that you wouldn't think that. I think David Lynch was at least in his 50s at that point, if not a little bit older. You wouldn't think a 50-something-year-old dude would be getting down with this on his soundtrack, but, you know, he implemented it in the film. I know this has maybe got a little bit more of a mass appeal, but the Chris Isaac song that was in Wild at Heart, you know, it wasn't even popular. It was already a track. It was already a single before then. It didn't get popular until because of that movie, essentially. Yeah, I actually didn't know that until after David Lynch had died. I went down some rabbit holes because I actually made my own tribute to David Lynch. It's on my personal YouTube that I posted, but using some footage from his films and pairing it with some songs that I felt like, you know, spoke to moments in those films that I took from. But yeah, I was like, I did not realize that that's what really made this Chris Isaacs song fucking popular.
I'm a huge Chris Isaacs fan.
I think the guy's underrated.
Oh man, in my car, all I listen to is Chris Isaacs and a couple of mixed CDs, but I have 2 Chris Isaacs records in there, and just I love him.
Yeah, I love the croonerish vibes. That, you know,
exactly. Yeah,
with I'm a huge
twist. Roy Orbison fan, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Traveling Wilburys might be the best supergroup of all time, in my opinion. They're up there for sure.
ELO is also one of my favorite.
Absolutely.
So
Jeff Lynne's the man.
Hell yeah,
very good. Well, you've been so generous with your time, Robbie. I could talk to you all night, man. I really appreciate
had a blast,
getting to know you. And man, I just can't speak enough good things about Heavy Heavy Low Low, how important that band's been to me, and how important you guys are to me. And
thank you so much.
So happy to see you guys back together doing awesome shit. I would say picking up where you left off, but it seems like you guys have jumped leaps and bounds ahead still yet, you know, which is just wild to see somebody operating at such a high level after a layoff like that, man. It's just incredible and it's encouraging. I love seeing it, and I love, you know, helping share your guys' story.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Barrett.
I need to make a collect call. Please fucking save me, I am here. Headphones in the air, I know you can't take me anywhere. But I need you listen, man. I'm fucking serious this time. When I'm lit, I'm in here, and it's just a bad vibes. It tastes like glory. Nightmare on a soul. Crying, screaming, licking, cutting. When did you think that the pain was coming?
Hello, this is Barrett from the ATI podcast, here to talk about the MANIC Compression Group. The various podcasts that make up the MANIC Compression Group include ATI Podcast, Waxing On with R&J, Nod Narb's Closet from Ed Ozen, and It's Just Two Movies. The MANIC Compression Group is a voice for the voiceless, a platform for those dream chasers. The various creative arms of the MANIC Compression Group all have one goal in mind, and that is to bring a spotlight to underground artists and amazing artistic works. ATI Podcast, hosted by yours truly, focuses in on interviewing rising artists, content creators, and small businesses. Waxing On with R&J, hosted by brothers Ridge and Jake Jackson, gives love to physical media. It promotes purchasing physical media as a means to support artists, album reviews, details on production and audio quality on various formats, all with the end goal in mind to give some love to some amazing artists. Outside of the physical media love, you're going to get reviews on recent concert viewing experiences as well as local show calendars. Nod Narb's Closet focuses in on miniature painting, the D&D world, role-play games, as well as various niches in the hobbies of 40k Warhammer, Dungeons & Dragons, and tabletop RPGs. Led by Brandon Stewart of Ed Ozen, Nod Narb's Closet brings attention to the many talented people involved in the hobby. It's Just Two Movies, hosted by Danny Key in a rotating guest panel, covers just that, two movies. One critically acclaimed or favorably viewed, and a secondary movie probably not good, but the hope is that it is so bad that it's entertaining. Sit back, enjoy some libations to the velvety tones of Danny King and guests with an injection of jocularity and improv comedy. The MANIC Compression Group can be found across all podcasting platforms, but the full experience can always be enjoyed on YouTube. We thank you all. Stay safe out there.